Welcome back to the new norm. Bit of a change of scenery today. I'm being chauffeur for my lovely wife Leah. In the intro that you might have seen, I talk about, including in the channel, about some obviously some travel ideas and tips and some hard conversations. So today I'm going to do something a bit different. I'm going to have a chat to my wife. I'm going to give you a bit of a background on myself, on certain things that really amplified my PTSD, and it's important to know, how PTSD can affect not only yourself but your family and your loved ones. So Leah's going to give insight onto what it's like to be married with someone with PTSD. So she assured me she's not going to sugarcoat anything. I'm a little bit nervous, but we'll see how we go. Hi, I'm Bats and welcome to the new norm. I'm a former police officer, now travelling with Norm, my car and my calm, as I navigate life with PTSD. After 18 years in the job, I've found peace in quiet places, and I share that journey here through camping, travel and honest conversations. This channel is for emergency service workers, their families and anyone needing a reset. Proud to be supported by Emergency, a not-for-profit that stands with New South Wales and ACT Emergency Services, connecting, educating and empowering those dealing with PTSD and other mental health challenges. So if you're looking for a bit of calm or a sense of community, you're in the right place. And always remember, you're never just a number. Okay, so a bit of background on me. This is my story. I joined the New South Wales Police in 2006. I was always destined to be a cop, I think. I come from a policing family, so... Oh, speaking of the devil, highway patrol just overtook me. At least I'm not overtaking highway patrol. But, yeah, I was always destined to be a cop. I felt like it was the direction that I wanted my life to go, and I loved it. I still think it's the best job in the world. I joined the detectives in about 2009, 2010. And really, I think, well, I know the majority of my symptoms and triggers come from my time as a detective. I'm not saying that it's the sole reason I developed PTSD, but when you're a detective, you investigate some of the more, or all of the more serious crimes. So you think you're doing well at the time, but you know your cup gets full eventually. So I decided enough was enough, and in 2022 I was showing many symptoms of PTSD, but I wanted to prolong my career, so I decided to have a change, and I went back into uniform. It was a big decision because it was a massive pay cut. I wasn't going to be paid as a detective anymore, but it was the right decision at the time because I started enjoying being a cop again, getting down and dirty, getting in crooks' faces again, back in uniform, and yeah, I was excited to be a cop again. And that's where the catalyst of me realizing that I can no longer work as a police officer anymore in September 2022. Now this is a hard conversation because I was seriously assaulted whilst on duty. I was involved in a violent arrest of an offender, and whilst I had my back turned, I was bowled over on purpose by a motorbike at full speed. So luckily I was knocked out instantly. The impact, that's all I remember, just a massive thud. But witnesses said that I was hurled meters in the air, basically did cartwheels in the air, and I landed headfirst on the concrete, which caused pretty serious injuries. The next thing I knew, I woke up. I had numerous police around me. I had ambulance already there treating me, and I didn't know where I was. All I could remember was feeling immense pain. I had blood coming from all over my head. Doctors said I had 2 extracranial hematomas. Luckily, any brain injuries were ruled out. I had a smashed left shoulder and a smashed right wrist and broken ribs. At the time, all I could remember was feeling so overtired. I just wanted to go to sleep. And obviously that was the head injury. Everyone was yelling at me to, don't go to sleep, just stay awake, stay with us. But I just could not help but fall back into unconsciousness. So yeah, it was a tough time. All my colleagues that helped treat me in the ambos, I can't rate highly enough. They were the care I got from them. And when I was rushed to hospital with suspected spinal back injuries, yeah, I can't rate my care high enough. But in saying that, like, I knew I was getting well looked after. I knew I wasn't going to die. But that's sort of different to how you sort of received a phone call, isn't it? So
Do you want me to talk about it?
you can talk about it, yeah.
So I was at work, and I think as a police partner, you always have an anxiety and a fear that you're going to get a phone call.
Here comes another one.
Oh, something's going on.
Mm-hmm.
How weird is that? That we keep getting passed by police cars.
I think I've mentioned before that I'm a bit of a sheep magnet, and
You right?
well, that's crash investigation. It's raining, so I really hope we don't drive upon anything. So, yeah, we'll deal with that if and when we get to it. But
yeah,
go on.
So yeah, I always had anxiety as a police partner. I think you always do about the kind of work they do. That kind of was amplified when Craig went into the tactical unit because it was a much more dangerous job. And on the day of the incident and the assault, I got a message while I was at work to say, from someone I knew in the police, say, can you call this number? I rang, and the officer said to me, there's been a bad accident. And I think...
Was it an accident?
It wasn't an accident, sorry. I think my words I said were, is he dead? And they said, he's not dead, but he's not good either. So of course I just panicked. My heart was in my throat. Funnily enough, in a group chat of school mums, there'd been some talk about there's been an incident near a local primary school. There's a police helicopter, there's police cars, there's ambulance everywhere. So I didn't know that involved Craig at that point in time, but I was on the phone to the officer. He said he's not good. He's been hit by a motorbike, and we need to get to the hospital as soon as possible. And they said, we're going to send a police car to come pick you up. So one of Craig's colleagues, his top bloke, came and picked me up. I ducked home to get some bits and pieces because I just thought I'm better to be prepared. And we went flying into the hospital. But because of all the suspected head injuries and spinal injuries, we actually sat in the ambulance bay for ages, just waiting for the ambulances to come in. And when the ambulances came, I'll never forget this, Ambo. She was so lovely. They came flying in, lights, sirens on, and she actually stopped the ambos getting Craig out of the ambulance and said, let me speak to the wife. And she came up to me and she said, you're going to get a really bad shock. I want you to brace yourself. It looks pretty terrible, but he can move his legs and he's talking. And I was like, okay. And I don't think even that prepared me for how bad it was when Craig came out on the trolley. There was blood everywhere. He had huge lumps on his head. Shoulder was just disfigured. It was pretty horrific to see. And I just burst into tears, and was like, it felt really dramatic. I felt like I was laying over the trolley, like sobbing, and then the ambo said we've got to take him in, and it was a bit like a movie when we got into the trauma ward, like into the resus part. They had like a team of doctors and nurses, and they had the bed ready for him, and they were all standing there waiting, and I was holding onto the trolley crying while they're wheeling Craig in, and then they sort of grabbed me and they put me back and they said, you can't go in there, we're going to work on him now. And so like a couple of police were there, and they um took me, it was really hard to leave Craig, and they took me to like a private room to wait while he got worked on. But it was a very surreal experience. I think they called ahead, hadn't they, the ambulance?
Yeah, so I think it's called a code one or something like
Yeah.
that my airbag friends have since told me. So basically, because I was a police officer with serious injuries, hurt on duty, they radioed ahead to basically get all hands on deck because you know it was. I mean, at the time, I was having a great time. I was dosed up on fentanyl and
Yeah.
morphine. I didn't realise all my worries had gone away at that point. But they obviously saw it serious enough to have a team of doctors and specialists on hand when I got there, and it was, you know, I feel a bit embarrassed now, come to think of it, because I'm thinking, oh well, I got away with luck. Well, I was extremely lucky, because all I came away with physically was just the head injuries, shoulder and wrist and ribs, which I think they're all you can they heal. Not the psychological scars, obviously, but yeah, it's good to know that when anyone is seriously injured like that, it's they don't cut corners.
Yeah.
They make sure to
They were pretty amazing. They had a whole trauma team um, designated to Craig. And I think one of the things that was hardest to move on from, because I actually got diagnosed with PTSD from the day of the incident, which I found very hard to swallow. Hey, like I don't feel like I'm worthy of that diagnosis.
Well, it's sorry to cut you off, but that's what it's important to know that vicarious trauma. If you don't already know about it, look it up. It's basically you
Witness.
you witness trauma. You can actually get PTSD from not even
Mm.
being directly involved in that trauma. So
I always felt it was not right that I got that diagnosis because Craig was the victim, not me. But I was having flashbacks, I was having nightmares, and like whenever I had to speak about what happened that day, like my heart would race, I would feel nauseous and breathless. So I've had treatment, I had EMDR, and it really helped a lot. So I feel better about it now. Like I wouldn't have been able to speak about it like this without being like sobbing and a mess. So
and you know what? It's being I suppose what's the word? I'm not good with words. Embarrassed about
yeah,
putting your hand up saying yes, you know, yes, I do have PTSD, but vicarious trauma is so important because people think. I think that's one of the main reasons why people don't speak up about their problems because they think, oh, I'm not worthy of that label.
yeah. Because it was
Um,
probably 18 months of nightmares and flashbacks before I talked to the doctor about it because I was just so focused on Craig and his recovery. One of the things that, like, I think maybe cemented the trauma of the day was the head trauma doctor at the hospital asked me if Craig always wore a bulletproof vest to work, and I said yes, he does. It's not compulsory. He chooses to for his own safety, and she said that saved his life. The speed that he was hit at, the impact would have killed him instantly. He's very lucky to be alive, and if he wasn't wearing that vest, he wouldn't have made it. So that was very hard to process how, just the vest changed the outcome so much.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I think I don't know where I was going with that again. Mental blank. But yeah, getting back on vicarious trauma. The cops, they tend to have what's called cumulative trauma. So it might not be one incident; it's just several incidents built up over time, and that is the definition of vicarious trauma. You know, you might investigate something, and you're not a direct, you're not directly the victim in that investigation, but when you investigate something properly enough, you become invested in the, the ins and outs and the whys and the how it all happened, and you basically relive that experience through the words of others. So um, yeah, so I was lucky. At the end of the day, I got to come home eventually to my family. Um, but yeah, like I said before, the psychological side of it didn't subside. I eventually, well, I wouldn't say I'm physically healed. There's still a lot of things I can't do anymore because of my physical injuries, but I still got to come home to my family. So that's
Yeah.
the massive silver lining. I can live with that. It's upsetting that I can't do things I used to love to do, but I'm still there as a husband. I'm still there as a dad
Yeah.
and a son, and that's the main sort of silver lining I always try and take away when I find myself in a bit of a negative mood.
Yeah.
Um,
But injury wise, um, Craig went into surgery the day after the assault, and his surgeon rang me, and after the surgery, because it went a lot longer, he was in surgery for a really long time, more than what we expected, and I was quite worried. They operated into the night and I wasn't hearing anything. When they rang me, they said it was just such a mess. When they got in there, his wrist was so badly broken they had to take a whole bone out.
the rest of it, the surgeon said it was like screwing screws into powder.
Yeah,
It was like powdered
like
bone. It just
his wrist was just completely shattered. The words they used to describe the collarbone were, we found the collarbone in 4 pieces, so it was sort of all floating about, and they had to put a huge plate in. And then they were like, oh, he's got a lot of broken ribs, but he's also had so many previous broken ribs where, so from work he had heaps of broken ribs over the years from different things, and then broke more, so there was a lot of that. But yeah, it took, the concussion was really bad. Like when I'd go to the hospital, he couldn't remember a lot, he couldn't tolerate light, he was like a bit slurry at times with his words, but the neurosurgeons checked everything multiple times and cleared him. But I remember thinking the night of the incident, talking to the trauma team, and like, considering in the afternoon when I'd had the phone call, I thought he was dead, and then, you know, didn't know what to expect going to the hospital, and then they were like, oh, it's broken collarbone, broken wrist, broken ribs, concussion, hematomas, and I was like, oh, okay. Like, it seems so naive now, because I just kept thinking he'll be fine, like 6 to 8 weeks he'll be back at work and we'll be back to normal. Like, it's going to be a tough 6 to 8 weeks, I might have to wipe his bum.
I was never going to allow that to happen.
And I thought, yeah, then life will be back to normal. And I think that was so naive to think, because it was like a Pandora's box open, don't you reckon?
Yeah.
It was like,
I did go back to work.
he did go back, but
Obviously light duties, but that only lasted about a month, I think, and it just hit me, didn't it?
yeah,